This is the World Satsanga on the 23rd of April 2016. So okay, we'll go as we are. I think things are going to have to be a little bit ad hoc tonight because we've got an unstable system by the looks of it, which is actually it's quite typical of Skype recently. I've noticed there's a lot of problem with having people of higher frequency on Skype. It seems that the system just goes totally unstable, and specifically during readings and healings, I've noticed that it can be a little bit sort of wobbly as well. So so this is I think not specifically a case of Skype being oversubscribed, but it could be that we're a higher frequency group, and it's also causing it to be unstable as well. So I'm just going to so I can grab Chris back in again, and then we'll okay, and there we go, add him to the call. Fantastic. Right, so let me just look at the agenda, which was basically it's introducing Fiona as well. Fiona's Chris can hear me, even though he's got me now. Great. So Fiona's a friend of Chris, and I welcome Fiona to the group, and thank you very much for participating. What I would suggest is if you can turn your microphone on and just give us a quick introduction to yourself and how you've been involved with spiritual bits and pieces, spiritual information. So if you can just give us just a few short lines to explain who you are and your spiritual background, Fiona, that'd be great. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Fiona. Okay.
Hi, how are you? I came across your work about 3 years ago. I've been following Dr. Wayne Dyer and his work, and Bruce Lipton.
Okay.
Are you aware of them?
Yes, Wayne Dyer, definitely.
Yes. And how I became introduced to spiritual work was through Brian West, about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Brian West.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started to read some of his books, and that kind of put me on the path.
Okay, fantastic. So you've I would say recently, I mean, relatively speaking, started to change your direction in terms of how you're experiencing existence here in the material world, and what you want to look at to justify your thoughts that there's much more beyond. Yeah, what we are. Okay, fantastic. So when Wayne Dyer, of course, is quite a powerhouse, or was quite a powerhouse in terms of his work and how he involved people and how he made people think. So it's a very good start point with Wayne and of course others as well. So it's an excellent start point. And what I would say to everybody, while we've got the chances. Don't limit yourselves to any particular information source. Look at all of the information sources and take on board those little bits of information that ring true with you, that you feel intuitively is correct, because each of us has a little bit of the jigsaw puzzle that makes the bigger picture. And so rather than sort of focusing on one small part of the jigsaw puzzle, try to get as much as you can do from all the different information sources, and just take a bit from here and a bit from there and a bit from over here and a bit from over there, and add it all together so that you've got a better understanding from a more global perspective rather than a very simple narrow band perspective. So that's the most important thing. Look at a broad brushstroke in terms of a broadband vision, and then narrow down on those parts that you focus on that are of interest and resonate as well. So thank you for that, Fiona. Well, we've got quite a lot of questions today that have been sent through from Ola and from Dan in Canada. Dan's a truth seeker who's got a completely different perspective to me. Well, it's not so much different. It's more a case of it's a different depth of approach, more what I would call cleaner for that perspective in terms of It's showing a level apart from the normal human identification of and understanding of what we're experiencing. I'm just trying to pull Marnie in as well, because Marnie's having a problem getting in contact. I might try and change the platform of this actually, because I think I'm starting to find that even though we've got this energy-based problems with Skype, that it's actually not as robust as it could be. I'm looking at something else, maybe even using the Chinese version, which is called QQ. But we'll look at that in a moment. I'm just going to have another go with so I can get Marnie in. Oops. Okay. Now then, the agenda looks at the introduction to the new person, Fiona. So if you can put your microphone on mute now, that's great. In terms of the next part, is really he's looking at the ego and identifying how the functions of the ego and how it can fool us and how it can make us think at times that our spiritual, shall I say, work can be used against us at times, because the ego is a very, very, shall I say, resourceful part of what we are. Now, for those of you who've listened to this before, I'll seek your forgiveness, but basically the ego is a temporary personality that's created as a function of our almost near total separation from our true energetic selves, which the Hindus call the Godhead, we sometimes call the higher self or the oversoul, and that part of it which is projected into the physical. And so, in essence, it's there as a temporary condition. Now, it itself, in the background, understands this, although we, in what we call our waking consciousness state, that uses the ego to exist and to interface with other individuals, quite, shall I say, unknowingly that it is a transient function, recognises that in itself it is, shall I say, living on borrowed time. It's basically only in existence while we're incarnate. It's created through this almost total separation of the soul or the aspect from the true energetic self or the Godhead. So from that perspective, we have an issue where we've got a personality, and it's not particularly sentient as such. The sentience comes from our true energetic self, our aspect, the soul. But it does have intelligence, and as a result of that, it does have a level of consciousness. And this level of consciousness intelligence tells it that when the physical body demises, or when the incarnation is finished, then it will no longer exist. Although that's not strictly true, because the essence of what it is and what it's experienced is passed on to the true energetic self, to allow it to experience it from the perspective of that part of us which is truly transient. And so it tries to keep itself in power as long as possible. And of course it's in power with us, because when we start to focus on the material world, we know that our ego is totally in control of us. So when we are totally immersed in our incarnation, we have no expectation or thought process surrounding the greater reality around us, of the higher frequencies, dimensions, subdimensions, zones, and the parts of the structure of the multiverse, and or our creator, the source. And so we have this recognition that it's going to disappear at some time. And so what it tries to do is keep us here, and by keeping us here, it perpetuates itself. Now, it also recognises that when we start to move away from our spiritual heritage, that it can live longer, because as we move back into our spiritual heritage while we are incarnate, we start to have higher thought processes, higher thoughts, behaviours, actions, and existence and and behaviours as well. And so when we do go into those higher thought processes, we bypass the ego and we go straight to who and what we are, our true energetic self, or our Godhead, oversoul, or higher self. And also we enable ourselves higher levels of functionality, which allow us to be in contact with our creator or our source, what we call God. So when this happens, the ego disappears. It can't exist because it only exists in a lower frequency condition, in a condition where it is in existence in isolation. But when we move away from that and we become unisolated by working on ourselves and meditating, it disappears. So it knows this. So its total response to this is to try to control the incarnate soul into believing, or in a way that keeps it in the lower frequencies. It keeps it immersed in the incarnation, keeps it away from thoughts, behaviours and actions that basically that allow it to move onwards and upwards. So the ego defends itself by keeping us in the lower frequencies of the material world, or the physical world, and it does it in every way it can do. Every time we think that we're beating the ego and we've won it, is when actually we've lost. We become weaker, because we have to be vigilant every second of the day. When we feel that we're becoming more spiritual, and we may start to feel slightly superior against somebody else and their thought processes, that's when we know the ego is taking control. Every time we feel that we're progressing, that we feel we're progressing, rather than our teacher or guru, or sensei or senpai is telling us we're progressing, the ego is taking control. It's making us feel superior, better, more capable, able, in an instance where we're still learning and striving very, very hard to go forwards. It's basically, it looks at our vulnerability. That's right, Chris. It looks at our vulnerability and uses it against us. As incarnate individuals, we are, for the large part of our incarnation, unless we can work on ourselves, pretty much alone, apart from the interaction with others we have of like mind. And so it tries to place us back into that. So every time we have a feeling of being pleased with ourselves, of being delighted with what we've done, we're wanting to show others what we've done, it's the ego that's driving us. Every time we feel that we've been successful, it's the ego that's driving us. We have to look at things and observe things in a detached, neutral way to understand when the ego is trying to get hold of our progression and use it against us, or we actually are progressing. And this is the dichotomy we have. Every time we progress, and we feel that we've progressed, we feel good about it, we have to check and make sure that our ego is not using it against us and is trying to pull us down into the ideas and thoughts and behaviours and actions surrounding status. Okay? Status is one of the things that is used against us on a regular basis. The ego likes to use gossip as well. For instance, when we are talking about something, or we find ourselves talking about someone about that something, and we all of a sudden find ourselves quite involuntarily drawn into a conversation and talking negativity about in a negative way about somebody or something. This is when the ego is taking control. It loves to use our vulnerability against ourselves. Even when we are feeling that we've got more than somebody else, that's the ego taking control of ourselves. When we feel as if we've got a better job than someone else, that's the ego taking control of ourselves. When we feel we've done something that is worthy of praise, that's the ego taking control of us. When we've done anything that is considered to be a success, and we want to broadcast success, that's the ego taking control of us. all of the Indian gurus, when you look at them, if they've done something, for instance, they've been successful in healing somebody and bringing them back from the brink of death from the perspective of the human body, they shy away from that work. If somebody wants to promote the work that they've done and wants to broadcast that work, the guru will move away from it. They'll say, no, 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 this is just the individual healing themselves. This is them doing the work of merely being a catalyst, nothing more than that. And as a result of that, the guru deflects the attention, or should we say the desire of the ego, from controlling it by making it feel egotistical through some form of status from that perspective. And again, if we earn more money than somebody else, and we're able to illustrate that through the procurement of expensive cars, for instance, clothes, houses, go on holidays, those sorts of things. When we want to do it, or feel a need to do it, and we need to broadcast it to others, we're showing off. That's when the ego takes control of us. If we want to just do it because we're interested in going to these different places and experiencing them, but we keep it quite close to our chest, i.e. we hide that, the ego hasn't got control of us, and we're allowing ourselves to experience that environment that we want to experience without fear of the ego taking control, although we should also always be vigilant. Behaviours as well. When we start to feel negative about something, or get drawn into negativity, similar with gossip, again, it's the ego taking control of us. We should be moving away from the need to be involved in a group of individuals who are collectively finding things wrong. We should be involved with a collection of individuals who are constantly working for the betterment of others around them, being of service, helping others, and also thinking good thoughts and working for the benefit of the environment. All of these things help us move upwards rather than downwards. And again, with the actions, I mean, how many of us have had a momentary lapse of concentration when we're driving our car and thrown a sweet wrapper out the window? That is the ego. I mean, we thought, oh, it's okay, it's only a sweet wrapper. Or, you know, or if people smoke, you know, the nub end of a cigarette, you know. Or even walking on the street, for instance, we can't find a bin. Oh, it'll be okay, we'll put it on the road. It'll be swept up by a road sweeper, all those who are cleaning the streets. And this happens a lot in India, actually, where people think, oh, if I don't throw something on the road, then the people who are employed to clean the roads won't be employed. That, again, is the ego taking control. It's allowing us to drop our standards so that we can be taken over in a much easier fashion than what would be available to the ego had we done nothing. So really, if you think of it in terms of comparing and contrasting our idealistic way of existing, where we're in tune with everything, we're loving everything, we're responsible for what we're doing, our thoughts, behaviours and actions, we control our thoughts, we can control our actions, we can control our behaviours, then we are winning the battle against the ego. It's when we find ourselves doing little things that we shouldn't be doing, like throwing the odd sweet wrapper out of the window, like not doing the washing up in the kitchen for days, or little things that we are not feeling responsible for those things that we've asked to be responsible for. Again, that's when the ego is taking control. So I would ask everybody who's participating today and who's listening to this Satsanga via the recording, to just give yourself a chance to stand aside from yourselves and in a non-judgmental way, just look at what you're doing, what you're thinking, how your behaviour is, and how you're acting. And which of those do you consider to be the ego taking the advantage of you and leading you down this downward spiral, which is difficult to spot because we become slowly, comfortably numb. So it's a little bit like being slowly anaesthetised, okay? Whereas on the other side, if we're working on ourselves and we're observing ourselves in a compassionate and neutral way, and we're spotting what we're doing wrong, and we're trying to work on that and try and correct ourselves, then we start to become slowly more aware and awake. As we become slightly more aware and awake, we get more intuitive, we get more connected, we get more higher functionality, and we're able to work with those entities that are on different frequential levels, the frequential states, and get higher knowledge as well. And we start to evolve whilst incarnate. And so the whole point of all of this is to observe the ego in a detached and neutral way, non-judgmental, and observe ourselves in the same way, and look at the difference between the two. What do we want to be? This way or that way? Thinking good thoughts or thinking negative thoughts? Having bad behaviour or having good behaviour? Having good positive actions helping others, or having actions that are basically being to benefit ourselves only, so we're being selfish? And this is what we should be looking at. So just take the opportunity to use the, as Susan and Donovan Satsanga said in the Independent Self, use the observer self to observe who and what we are and how we're going, and how we're performing. And you'll be surprised how many things you do. And I'm certainly surprised. I'm continuously catching myself out and checking myself and working out what's going on, and the ego sneaking in. And it's really, and it can use us in terms of our lethargy as well. It can make us feel lethargic about things and fed up with things, specific by overlaying an expectation on a certain outcome. And so it can use us that way. So just be aware that anything that is out of what you would expect or want to be a true spiritual path and a true spiritual and evolving way of existing is usually a function of the ego trying to sneak in the back door and controlling it. So if you can think of any way the ego can take over, it will do. There is no limit. There's no limitations on how resourceful the ego can be. So just to be more than resourceful and be at least 2 or 3 steps ahead of the ego, and you'll be fine. You'll be evolving and moving upwards, experiencing higher frequency functionality, and you'll be able to commune with your higher self, your Godhead or Oversoul, Source, and other entities within the multiverse, and even projectual consciousness around the different multiversal environments as well. Okay, well that's a little bit about the ego. We've got a whole bunch of questions here. I'm just going to very quickly look at my inbox here to go right to the start. I think the very first ones we've got are from Ula. Okay, so Ula, if you want to, thank you very much. Ula's just put them on the Skype instant messaging service so that you can read the questions yourself, and I'm going to read them out for the recording. So the first question is our earthly, egoic personality different from our soul personality or specialism acquired over many lifetimes? Do they work in parallel or in contrast with each other to accelerate our learning here? Or do we know what our aspect specialism is? Or sorry, how do we know? Right, the first part is, well actually very good, because the ego is different. The ego is in survival mode. The ego is the human condition in 99.9999 recurring % cases. It is a different personality from our soul, although it is an aspect of the total personality that our soul or aspect and therefore true energetic self will be. Because we do experience, learn and evolve from experiencing things from the egoic perspective as well. So although the ego dies as a function of the demise of the physical body, it does create a learning opportunity to represent how we experience things in this near total separation from ourselves. And so although there's the soul personality, so to speak, or should I say from the higher perspective, the true energetic self's personality does change over many lifetimes, many projections into different environments, it matures, if you want to call it that, and becomes wiser and more loving and more powerful. The ego is what it is at the point of the incarnate state and during the condition of the incarnate state only. In terms of working in parallel with each other, of course, there is information taken from that experience via the ego that the true energetic self can take and work with. And so there is a level of parallel expression there of learning, evolving and moving forward as a result of it. But in terms of the aspect specialism, that's a big question actually. It's just a few words, but it's a big question. How do we know what our aspect specialism is? We would need to ask our true energetic self or guide to give us the overall from that perspective. I mean, we all have different specialisms from the point of view of, you know, how we're experiencing incarnation, how we're experiencing the multiversal environment, how we're experiencing the finer detail, the structure of the source, and feeding back to it. And we do it in different ways. Some of us might experience, for instance, the minute detail in certain expressions of civilization in a material world, in the material condition, not specifically on Earth, but they may choose to have certain levels of technological advancement, as an example, on Earth and on the other myriad different incarnated vehicles supporting planets that there are in the physical universe and its frequencies. And so, for instance, to hone it even down, they may want to experience the incarnate state when it is experiencing flashes of awareness or becoming more and more spiritually aware, or it may want to experience the very basics of the technological growth, for instance, the invention of the wheel, for instance, and the use of water to drive irrigation, and all of these different things, the manipulation of water to drive irrigation. And that level of technology or thought process or expression might be used as a basis for the experiential content of the similar thing in different planets, for instance, in the physical universe, and the different frequential states within the physical universe. So it's those are the sort of specialisms we have. Some souls or aspects, and even true energetic selves, like to specialise in putting themselves in hard places, incarnations where it's extremely difficult to move out of. For instance, there's many examples of individuals who've had hard lives, become criminals, and then move out the other side and become very, very good citizens. And so it's a case of they will specialise in experiencing that route and the different types or the different variations upon that. Okay, let's have a look at the next question now. Is the Zika virus infection man-made or a spontaneous epidemic that causes birth defects? Or, for example, microencephaly. What is the source's position on abortion, i.e. if the mother is infected? And when does the soul permanently enter the body at conception, at the embryonic or fetal or birth state? The Zika virus, I don't know. So let me ask that the question. Right, the information I've been getting is that Zika virus is in effect man-made, but not specifically man-made in terms of in a laboratory. It's a function of our remaining in a lower frequential state, and as a result of that, the mutation of existing viruses into a state where they can affect the human body. Anything can put us into a lower frequential state, whether it's fear, materialism, or the need to have certain levels of status, etc. So basically, it's a function of our frequential condition, and that low frequential condition is allowing the mutation of existing viruses to take control. And Ulla's just said there's 2.2 billion people at risk. Yes, I mean, that gives you an idea of how many individuals are potentially at the wrong frequential state, doesn't it, really? If you can think about some of the worldwide issues we've had with things like the Black Death, the HIV, and all these different things, it's basically a function of when there's a need to reset the clock or start again, then us being at the wrong frequential level allows something to be created that does in fact reset the clock, and that means that a lot of us from the incarnate position leave the planet, and this is how these different viruses come into being. The source's position on abortion, if a mother's infected, the loss of any vehicle is a tragedy, I'm being told, because every vehicle that can come into fruition, this is a body, human body, is the opportunity for a soul to experience incarnation and experience, learn and evolve as a result of that, irrespective of whether there's defect or not. If there's defect, the soul grows faster than if there isn't defect. And so, any body that is aborted is potentially difficult. And the answer, just asked, even if the mother's life is in danger. The answer to that is yes, because the mother's life might be taken out of danger, and it could well be that the soul that's existing in the mother's body has decided to experience that level of danger to allow another soul to experience incarnation as well. So it's a very human thought process to think about, if the baby's got cancer, for instance, or Zika or HIV whilst in the mother's womb, it could potentially infect the mother. If the mother isn't infected and the child and she's just simply a carrier, so should we take the baby out and abort it? On the other side, it could be that the mother is infected and the baby's okay. Do you take the baby out and let the mother die on its own? It's all to do with the experience of the soul, not to do with the thought process that the human being should try to perpetuate the human body for as long as possible. If it's part of the life plan that the mother, or should we say the soul within the mother's body, is expecting to experience the disease as part of their experiential and evolutionary progression, then they will do, irrespective of what's going on around them. In terms of when does the soul permanently enter the body? Well, even before the birth state, there is a link between the entities or the souls that are animating the potential parents and the soul that is going to be born into a body that is born through the interaction of those parents. And so, even before the conception stage, there is work on a life plan there. And if there's birth control involved, then that's understood. I mean, think of things in a more holistic way, in a more holographic way. Is that the souls know that a potential father or potential parent is going to have an abortion, for instance, or is going to have birth control. So the birth control doesn't come into it as such. That's a linear function. They work with that which is going to be. They know what's going to happen. Everything's happened already anyway. So they look, everything happened, everything is happening, everything will happen. And it's happening now, all concurrently. So everything is understood anyway. So they take upon themselves to enter into the physical vehicles that are going to be successfully created as a result of that. So the birth control side doesn't come into it at all. And really, the comment about the permanent side of it is actually not a clear answer, because the soul doesn't permanently enter the body at conception or the embryonic or fetal stage, or even the birth state, the soul can move in and out of that body up until around the age of 4, and then it starts to become more and more attached and connected to the body. And it's only around about the age of 7 that the soul is fully integrated with the vehicle it's going to use for its incarnate experience. Okay, actually this description's in the Anne Dialogues, which has been accepted for publication now. So when that comes out on the shelves, you'll be able to read that part as to the expression of the integration with the aspect or the soul and the human fetus. Okay. Last question is the Schumann resonance a valid way to measure our frequencies on Earth? And it said that I read that in 1952 it is 7.2 hertz, but it is now at 33.8 hertz. Is that true? My understanding is that we can't use hertz as a way of understanding or measuring the frequencies on Earth. They are, although we use the word frequency to explain it, it's not a particularly good descriptor, and although it gives us the right direction in thought process, it's not particularly accurate. So the use of hertz, which is the number of events per second, isn't accurate at all. So the answer is no, we can't use it really. It's not. Even though I use frequencies and energies and dimensions and things, I'm told to use those, and I'm told to express things in terms of being holographic. I still sometimes refer to time and the linear ways of experiencing things. And although that's a slightly backward step, it allows us to move forwards because it gives us a vehicle to work with and move forwards in a way that allows us to gain extra information and think in a more concurrent or holographic way. But the frequential state that's talked about there with the Schumann frequencies is grossly inadequate and incorrect at best. Although, if you look at it from a very, very simplistic perspective, it shows we've increased our frequency. So from that perspective, if you think of it just simply in those terms, then it's okay. But don't use the actual figures that are there as being useful in this description. Okay. So we've now got another series of questions, I think, from a fellow. Okay. Right. Oh, very quickly, yeah, about Peru. It's in the Satsanga. Can please tell you more about Peru? What did you discern about Machu Picchu versus the Nazca lines, alien or human constructs, and the next white child to be born in Peru? Right. What I picked up was that the Peruvians themselves, although they're wonderfully friendly people, are somewhat disorganised and poorly led, to be honest, by their government, and that's what I picked up. In terms of the nature of the area, it was, the large chunk of Peru, which is desert, probably about a third of it, and the result of that, it's very stark in terms of its environmental opportunities. From the human perspective, and there are obviously beings who could live in that particular environment and thrive totally. And what we think of a thriving area is the rainforest side of Machu Picchu. So the Nazca lines exist in this potentially stark area, and Machu Picchu exists in this potentially thriving area. But what I felt was that certainly the Nazca lines was that it wasn't really constructed by any aliens at all. What I felt, and it didn't sort of sink in till later, was that the lines were created by individuals as a test piece in being able to create a picture or an image of size which is beyond the specifically visual range of the eye, i.e. not on a piece of paper or a computer screen, for instance, and that picture should show a level of mathematical understanding in terms of size, in terms of area, in terms of length of line used, and it showed that the individuals themselves had an understanding of a specific mathematical, I've got been given the word symbolism or constructs that they could use to understand other things, and so they were all a bit of a test. Now the reason why they're still there is because the winds in NASCAR don't come down to the ground level. They stick it around 20 or 30 meters above the ground. So the NASCAR lines have been there for a long time, specifically because there's this strange wind phenomena there where wind doesn't touch the ground. It's there, it doesn't touch the ground, and it can be quite severe wind as well. So it's basically a human construct by individuals who are showing a specifically advanced level of mathematics, and this mathematics is expressed in these lines that they're creating, and they've created in a way by using a form that they've worked out that they can use to express their knowledge of a particular mathematical function that can be expressed in this way. So basically it's a test, and they've had to construct something which would show their understanding of this particular form of mathematics. Machu Picchu is it's very interesting, but it's almost like it's in the wrong place. Because if you look around Peru, the so-called stones that are earthquake-proof are very much felt were earthquake-proof not by design or thought, but by a simple function of build. And they used a random design and put the blocks together. And when you look at the really big blocks, the ones that are like tons of weight, and they're supposed to move them 40 kilometres, a bit like Stonehenge, to put them in these particular places. The joints are so clean they couldn't possibly have been done by a stonemason, because a stonemason would have, even if they're perfect, would have had some errors, in terms of there could be weaknesses in the rock in certain areas, so certain parts would flake off, whereas others wouldn't. But we only have to look at slate to know that unless you grind the surface of slate, you will not get a perfect surface. There's always concavities and convex areas as well. And so I really do believe, from what I saw, that in effect they were cut by some other form. They looked like they've been cut it looked like they're almost like butter, and they've been cut perfectly, and they fitted together perfectly. And that's what I'm seeing. That's what I saw. I think there was an understanding of technology, whether it's a method of making the molecular structure a higher frequency, and therefore separating the molecular structure to do it, to put them together in a way which was going to create a bond, not specifically the bonds that we have with brickwork in the rest of the world now, but a bond that allowed it to use the general shape of the rock that was there and do minimal changes to it, so it would bond, and then the next rock would be made in a bespoke way to fit with the next one. And I believe that was the reason for the strange shapes that ended up being earthquake-proof, is they weren't regular, they were bespoke, and that created this this ability to be resistant against the resonant frequencies of earth movements or earthquakes. Fiona just asked a question, what do I understand about the tetragrammaton and the sacred geometry? Sacred geometry, basically, so very quickly, Machu Picchu wasn't created by aliens, it was created by individuals who had some level of higher technology that may have been expressed in a very simple way, but at the moment we haven't grasped it. I mean, don't forget, we've got the ability to, if we don't have any limitations, we can do anything we want to with very, very basic and rudimentary technology. We don't need to have supercomputers to be able to understand how to split the atom. We didn't have it in those days. So, just think of it in those particular ways. Sacred geometry is basically a program to describe the functionality of specific types of energy. I believe it's described in the Beyond the Source Book 2 book, the different types of sacred geometry and what they do, in a very sort of simplistic sense. But basically, it's like a from a human perspective, a three-dimensional instruction of what different energies do, what they can be used by, what energies they interface with, what they can be merged with or melded with, what they can be what they will hang on to or could be added to, and how they can function when they're in a what do you call it? An alloy type of sense where you've got the energies mixed together. So they are basically an information centre of what particular energies will do. Okay, and and also I noticed, because we went to another place, like an amphitheatre, and although I got this sense in Machu Picchu, later I didn't quite link it with the sense I got in the other place, this large amphitheatre, because I did a walk around the place. With all of us who went there, we were affected by the altitude, because it's very, very high altitude. It took a long time, about 9 days, to get used to it. But what I noticed was there was evidence of sea life. There's little shells there that you would normally only see in the sea, or as part of sand. Now, unless they've imported sand and scattered it all over the mountain of this area, then the area of this amphitheatre must have been at some point either underwater or it's exposed to the air moments for a period of time, with the rest of it being underwater. And I'm very much starting to feel that Machu Picchu was in an area where previously there's lots of water around. And so Machu Picchu, although it looks like it's very high up now, may have been underwater in the dim and distant past. And so the location of it would be reasonable, and the areas around it, like Huayna Picchu, and the doorway of the sun, the portal of the sun, which is another walk from Machu Picchu, would have been either exposed from the water above the water or as islands. And so the whole area, and these areas, and much of the earth must have been underwater at some point. And and thinking back, this may have been coincidental with this flood legend that we hear about with Noah and the Ark. And so it all may tip together that at some point the Earth may have thawed out from a massive ice age, which caused it all to flood totally for a long, long time, and mankind existed on small islands or land masses that were quite high, and so we only had the ability to build places on high altitude areas, and that's sort of what I'm picking up. Okay, so we've got one more set of questions before we go into a meditation about healing ourselves, and that's from Dan. The white child. No, I've done nothing about the white child in Peru, by the way. Nothing about the white child in Peru, strangely enough. And it felt as if the timing wasn't quite there. I'm just logging into it now. I'm being told the timing isn't right yet. It's on its way, but the introduction, the juncture of introduction isn't there yet. It's going to be soon, but not quite yet. It's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like it's there, it's not there. You know, we'll look back in a couple of years' time, and it will happen, and that particular entity will be born and waiting, will be incarnate and waiting for us. But I didn't pick up anything about the white child there, and all I've done now is just logged in, and it's not quite there yet. It's not quite in the incarnate state yet. But obviously, when I found out about the next white child and what's happening in the proof from that particular representative of the white children, I'll let you know as soon as I know myself. And I've got one more set of questions. Hopefully, we can get these done quite quickly. I think they're quite searching. First one is this is from Dan in Canada. It said, knowing that a fundamental aspect of the origins, I'm going to cut and paste this so you can read this as well, because Ula can't do it. Okay. Where are we? Okay, let's paste and go. So, knowing that a fundamental aspect of the origins' ultimate reality is represented by the eternal, never-changing now, and assuming we can theoretically isolate a section of this now, what would be its structure? The elements, how are they created, and how they interact together to create this never-changing state of now? That's a big question, and it's a big answer. I'm just going to log into that and see what we can get. From a human perspective, we won't be able to spot the difference. We won't be able to spot the difference between what we're experiencing now from a human state and what a slice of this fundamental aspect of ultimate reality is. If we think of it in terms of, even though our understanding is extremely limited beyond belief, beyond even comprehension, that whatever we do understand is part of that never-changing now, and that's it. Or the event space is part of it. Actually, the event space is part of everything. It is a fundamental part of the structure of the source, and the origin, of course. And so everything is what it is now. If we can look at structure, that's part of that structure of now. We can look at the elements, that's part of the elements of now. Whether we're perceiving it or seeing it or experiencing it from a human perspective or from the perspective of another being in the physical universe or another being within the multiverse. Everything is part of it now. So it's difficult to say what it is, because it depends upon our experiential condition as to how we perceive it and experience it, and our own frequential state as to that level of experience as well. Is it never changing or ever changing? It's ever changing is the answer to that question. It's ever changing. It's always evolving, and it is evolved. It is unevolved, evolving, and evolved. It's everything at once, and every piece of structure that we know or don't know is what it is. And so there's nothing that we can say from an absolute perspective, from a human term, that this is origin. This is a slice of the ever-changing now, because it is, everything is. If you look under an electron microscope and you see the atoms or the electrons or the quarks, etc., that's part of it. So everything is part of that ever-changing now. That's everything. This never-changing state or ever-changing state. Everything is what it is. Okay. Next part. In the no-time scheme environment, where do our guides exist? And taking into consideration that our concept of time has no meaning and representation for them, how do they know what precise interval of our time to interact with us? Or in other words, what kind of non-temporal structure do they use that connects the continuous now with their reality, which contains an apparent element of time or duration? Well, if we go back to the structure of event space, which is everything is existing concurrently, either and is in constant contact with each other, or directly through the direct contact, or indirectly through indirect contact, through the contact of other spaces together, then everything is existing concurrently. There's no future, there's no past, there's no beginning, there's no end, there is just now. And so, from our human perspective, we've lost the ability to, through being incarnated into lower frequencies, of being in this state of awareness of and interaction with this completely no time environment, this everywhere at once environment, this everything at once environment. So, whilst we're here experiencing linearity through our inability to comprehend because of our low functionality in these low frequencies, our guides and helpers can experience everything that we've done, will do, can do, should do, may do, will do, all at the same time. So they see it all happening at the same time and just dip in to a certain juncture of same timeness or concurrency is a better way of saying it, and work with that level of concurrency, knowing that everything happens concurrently for them, but for us it's in a linear function. So they just experience or work with the, shall I say, the right juncture of concurrence that links in with our linear expression or experience of this concurrence, this total concurrence. Okay, and the next question is number 3. Copy and paste. So the third question before we go into meditation is understanding that the essence of events represents the substructural event spaces. What are the main forces or actions or energies that exist in the core of the essence of events and how they interact together? A new possibility becomes apparent to create a primary perturbation in the initial environment. It's created by, I'm just being told, it's created through disturbance. Event space is essentially a pure condition where everything is in a state of perfection, and it's only when things have the possibility of becoming a state of imperfection that event space creates another event space. And so it's this I'm trying to get the right word here. It's this disturbance, lack of homogeneous condition, this lack of harmony that allows the event spaces to become, rather than one total event space that is everywhere as a singular state of environment, a state of space, a state of expression of everything happening concurrently, to a state of, there's a separate potential there, and therefore move it to one side and create another version of itself. So it's like a frustration. It's like a frustrated state of a lack of homogeneous space. It is a resistance created through a changing condition. It's a ripple effect, if you want to call it that. It's a disturbance. It's like somebody putting their finger in a bucket of water. So all our parallel cells are imperfect and frustrated, and so we're here. From that perspective, yeah, duality is an existence that results through being in the physical universe. But in essence, everything is in perfection, even though it's imperfect, and it is perfect. But when there's a ripple effect, when there is a disturbance to that level of perfection, then we get the creation of duality, triality, quadruality, duality to the power of n. Then we start to get this change where the forces and actions that create this essence of events changes, and it can either create the compression of events into one event, or the dissolution of that compression of events that creates a single event into multiple events. It's very I mean, it's easy to see, but it's difficult to explain in human terms. But in essence, it really is like a frustration in. That's the best way I can say it. It's a frustration in the order of the essence of all events existing in a coherent, corroborated, and instantaneously happening thing. Everything happens concurrently. So this level of so when concurrence is affected, then we start to get this change where the essence of events can move from being homogeneous to being unharmonious. Okay. I mean, you could call it moving outside the vortex of energy. Yes. It's almost like if a boat is moving with the natural flow of a river, then you'll get no bow wave. But when you want the boat to move away from the flow, either go faster, go against the flow, go to the left or go to the right, then you create a bow wave. So you create a different condition to that which is homogeneous. So if you go with the flow, if everything goes to the flow, then we don't get any changes, we don't get any different event spaces. And so the essence of events is maintained as being a singular, homogeneous, all-encompassing event, rather than a series of events which are the possibilities of, or the possibility of the possibilities of, or the possible possibilities of the possible possibilities of additional directions, methods, ways, or potentials. Okay, so I don't know if I've answered that particular question properly. I can see it in my mind's eye, but it's difficult to put down into words. And I think Ula's going to have a quick question first before we go into this meditational healing. So, isn't our evolution based upon multiple event spaces to explore? Yeah. The difference is that so for human terms, we think of everything in a linear fashion. So we expect that events follow each other. There's a start of event and there's an end of event. And the start of event, in the human terms, links in with the end of another event. But it's not true. Everything exists concurrently. And in fact, there isn't, although it's in the, I think it's in the, it's either in the Origin Speaks or Beyond the Source 2, when I talk about the start and end of events, that's just a thought process for us to work with. In reality, there is no start and end of an event. It is just an event. The events are there. The event is the event. Events are part of the event. Everything happens concurrently, and everything is instantaneous. So there's no start and finish of an event. It's just all essence of events, and those events are an event. And so they are. There's no beginning and end. It's just there. And but the interaction with those events that causes a change to the concurrency of the overall event or essence of events causes this ripple effect, this disturbance. That's a better way of saying it. And the disturbance creates the need for additional event spaces to cope with that disturbance from the homogeneous essence of the events that was in existence. Okay, so what I think we'll do, we'll just hopefully, I think Fiona's topping one last question, and then we'll have to move on to the meditation because we've come to the end of our time period. A quantum effect is a quantum effect would be a very poor way of describing it at best. A quantum effect is like saying, can you explain tile mathematics with 1 + 1? The answer is no, you can't. But somebody might be able to. But the quantum effect is something where mankind is trying to understand how things can happen if we observe them or not observe them. But the observation function is something that's only been relatively understood. I mean, Schrodinger's cat's another one, isn't it? It either is or it isn't, or it is and it isn't at the same time. That's the same thing. I always like the cat in Alice in Wonderland. That's another one where it's always stating that it's here, but it isn't. And again, the wave versus the particle. The wave is the particle is the wave. It just depends how it feels, and whether it represents itself as a particle or a wave. But if it can represent itself as a particle or a wave, what is it in real terms? It's part of the essence of everything, and it could be that the event changes it to be a particle or a wave. Does it depend if it's observed or not? No. I think the observation is simply a little nudge in the right direction that we're getting to think of it in a different way. It's just a little milestone. Okay, so yeah, it could be feeling, but it could be a whole bunch of other things we haven't got an idea about in terms of how we can sense things. So, in the final part of this then, we're going to have meditation, and the meditation is to do with, in effect, healing ourselves. So we've done meditations on healing ourselves before. I'm just making sure. Okay, but this is a different way of doing it. Okay, so for those of you who are used to this process of healing, of meditating, in terms of how we physically align ourselves, just make sure that you're sitting in a straight backed chair. Okay, and your feet are firmly on the ground, flat on the ground. Your hands have your palms pointing uppermost and resting on your upper thighs, and your eyes are closed, with the focus of the intention of focusing your eyes is on the area of the third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. Okay. And this is going to be a meditation really on using our intention. So not specifically visualization, but more intention. Okay. So I want you to focus on two things. One, the perfect representation of your physical form. And two, the perfect functionality of that physical form. And just consider those two things while I give you this guiding narration. Okay. So, let your concentration move into your body. Still keep your focus on the area of the third eye. This is allowing you to draw the energy in from the greater reality, source entity energy, okay, higher frequency, and bring your consciousness into your body. Think of your body as a glass vessel, if you wish, or any other vessel, no problem, and that you can move around your body. Think of it right now as just being this empty vessel. And that the space where your head is empty, space where your neck is empty, space where your upper and lower chest is empty, space where your stomach is empty, where your backbone is empty, where your left and right hand, upper arms, forearms, hands, fingers are empty. Your thighs, your knees, your calves and your ankles and heels, feet and toes, they're all empty. Everything is empty. But your consciousness moves around and it bounces off the perimeter of the outside of the physical aspect, the gross physical aspect of your human form, and allows you to move inside. So it's like this outside edge is like a glass form. This glass form gives you the basic shape of your gross physical human form. This empty glass form represents the pure state, pure energy given form. Just the shape, the outline shape of the human form. I'm not going to go into the templates associated with the chakras, because they are different levels of template depending upon the frequential states or the frequencies associated with each of the different chakras. This is going to be a different way of thinking about it. The level of impurity now is judged by what we fill the gap with. And the gap is the inside of this glass shape of the human form. So if you want to focus on part of your body that is particularly, shall we say, inefficient in its function, that means if you've got a bad knee or a bad hip, or you might have poor blood circulation or poor skin, or you may have broken a bone and wanted to heal, we may have a cut or grazed skin. Focus upon that part of your body and fill that part of your body that you feel is not pure, okay, with that part that isn't pure. So you've got this pure emptiness. The form is empty. It is pure high frequency energy. You're now going to fill it with lower frequency energy that represents your physical form in that particular area. It doesn't have to be the whole body. It can be just a knee or a calf or an ankle or a hand or a rib or a liver or a kidney, you know, or an eye or a couple of teeth. Doesn't necessarily mean, doesn't have to be your whole body or a significant part of your body. It can be just a part of it that you want healing. But I want you to work on visualizing or creating that part that you want to heal in the right place within this level of purity. The level of purity is high frequency, so there's nothing for us to see. It is in complete harmony with that which is supposed to be, the form that it's supposed to be. Disharmony creates low frequency. So if you've got a bad knee, for instance, I want you to visualize in the place of the left or the right knee, okay, the bone structure of that knee, the upper and lower bone structure, the femur and the tibia. And in between you have the cartilage and the patella on the outside. And you have the ligaments holding it all together, and the muscles that help you contract and retract those ligaments so that the leg moves from the knee. And then everything is covered in skin. And then in the middle of the bones you've got this bone marrow, which is where some of the larger bones like the pelvis and the femurs, where the blood cells are made. And I want you to visualize the area of dysfunction or inefficiency. Whether you've got a worn knee or a damaged cartilage or a torn ligament or an atrophied muscle through some form of accident. I want you to visualize that muscle or that part in its entirety, and that muscle being in its damaged state, or that cartilage being in its damaged state, or the knee joint being worn on the top or the bottom bearing surface area, or the patella being cracked if you've fallen over and cracked your knee at some point. Just visualize it in its damaged state. This is the state of beingness where the physical part of you is in disharmony with what it's supposed to be. A purely harmonious condition where everything functions correctly, everything's animated perfectly, everything is in its optimal state, but we've broken it, we've damaged it, we've caused disease, inefficiency, degradation, demise. What I want you to do now is just to give it energy. If you want to, you can visualize yourselves injecting energy, high frequency energy with a hypodermic needle into the area that is damaged, the muscle, the bone, the cartilage, the ligament or the skin. Okay. Whichever way you want to do it, you can see energy pouring into it. Just lift it to a higher frequency. See it being higher frequency. And know that as you give it more higher frequency, you're giving it permission to move away from this dysfunctional low frequential state that gives it inefficiency or allows the damage that you've created to perpetuate itself. And it starts to eradicate or erase that condition, which can only stay in that condition whilst it's in a low frequency condition state. So as you give it more energy, you're starting to erase the dysfunctional condition, this appropriate condition, this inability to be condition, this inability to be perfect. So just give it energy. You can shine a torch on it if you want to, and the light shining on the area is representing higher frequency. Yeah. Just keep shining the torch on it or injecting higher frequency energy into it. And as you do so, that part that you're concentrating on will start to become higher frequency. And in your mind's eye, it will start to remove its coherence from a physical perspective. So you'll start to see it dissolve. You'll start to see it dissolve. Not actually dissolving as such, but more becoming higher frequency, and is entering into a higher state, a state of purity rather than a state of impurity. A state of purity is created through it being a higher frequency rather than being in an imperfect state in a lower frequency. And so it starts to become less and less coherent from the representation of a physical perspective, and more coherent in terms of its higher frequential state. And when it's in a higher frequential state, it becomes less and less visible to you. So your damaged knee, whether you're working on the bone or the cartilage or the ligaments or the muscle or the skin, starts to become transparent. Your intention to heal it, to give it higher frequency energy, starts to remove the low frequency, this stiction and this dysfunctional condition, and starts to make it more functional in a higher frequential condition. And so the imagery of it in your mind's eye, in your perceptual vision, starts to show it becoming more and more transparent. The more energy you give it, the more intention to have it return to its functional state rather than dysfunctional state, to its pure state rather than impure state, starts to return it into a higher state of being, a higher frequency, and so it starts to become invisible, transparent, waif-like, just the outline of. Slowly you start to see it becoming more and more incoherent, less and less visible. Keep giving it energy, keep injecting energy into it, or shining this torch of higher frequency energy over it. It starts to raise this image of expectation of the damage that's there, leaving only a pure empty vessel, of which there's just a representation of our human form as an outline, just like a glass vase, with the vase being the outline of the human form. Keep concentrating on this change, keep concentrating on giving it the energy. Eventually you start to see it move from being totally visible to being slightly incoherent, to being less visible than visible, to becoming only barely visible, to becoming almost gaseous, to becoming totally invisible, and then knowing that it is totally coherent and higher frequency. And just feel how that feels within you. That area that you've worked on, that you've had a problem with, no longer seems to be a problem. No longer aches, gives you sharp pains, feels uncomfortable, feels slow or sluggish, or gives you worry about movement. Its frequential state is now high, and the gross physical aspect of it starts to align itself to that higher frequential state. So you can use this at home if you wish, to work on yourself, to continue this work, or work on another part of yourselves, or somebody else. You can use it on somebody else if you wish. So very slowly you can start to bring yourself back into being in your place of meditation, where you're listening to this Satsanga. Change your focus to being back into your room, and very slowly open your eyes. And if you've got any liquid, water, tea or something similar, not alcoholic, take a drink just to help ground yourself. And that's it for today. Okay, feel free to use that technique on yourself. It's quite a nice little technique. It'll help you you can use it on your whole body if you wish. It's a very nice way of giving yourself a healing and giving somebody else a healing. It's a very nice way of smoothing out the energies as well. So take that away with you and use it whenever you feel like you want to use it. Okay, so I'm going to thank all of you for being here today. I thank Fiona for being here for the first time, and those who couldn't make it to send their apologies, thank you for sending your apologies. And again, thank you all for spending an hour and a half of your personal time for listening to the questions and the answers, and a little bit about the ego. So, good night from my side, or good morning from the New Zealand side, and I think good morning from the other side, over in Hawaii or the Midwest, those sorts of areas. And look forward to working with you in May. And I'll send out the invites as soon as I've finished this recording, along with the link so you can download the recording. Okay, so thank you everybody, and God bless you all, and Namaste as well. Good night, good morning, and good morning.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?